I know you're excited to get away, and I cannot wait for you to experience the freedom that exists outside of America. But, sis, I have to warn you, make sure that you are not moving to these 5 countries. But if you are, you were warned. Okay. I've been to 100 countries, and on average, I've stayed between 6 months to 2 years in many of them. So, this isn't just a 1 week vacation that I was like, it's multiple visits over multiple years and just really negative experiences. So at very least, just know that you were warned, even if you do move forward with one of the countries that I mentioned. Okay, so number 5. The 5th place that I don't recommend Black Americans move is Australia. There are many Black people that thrive there. There are even Black Americans who find it to be a different type of experience. And I like to consider it as racism light or racism junior. That's how it feels to be in Australia. And I've visited 4 times and spent about 9 months total. Different places: Sydney, Gold Coast, Melbourne. And it's a beautiful country. Let me start with that. These places that I've mentioned, it has nothing to do with their physical beauty and everything to do with the liberation and experience that you're going to have as a Black person, especially as a Black woman. And I found Australia and some Australians to be a little bit, and again, I'm mindful in my words because you cannot make a blanket judgment of all of them, but you can even look up the history of how they have dealt with Aboriginals and just the lack of acknowledgement and lack of reparations. So the classism that you're going to feel is at least better than some of the racism in the US, but it is not, it wouldn't be shocking if you had an experience where you felt discriminated against because of your skin color. There were some places, especially in Sydney, where I was like, wow, I'm the only Black person or person of color in this area, in this room, in this whatever. And it almost felt like there was this collective, I don't know, like I just never really felt like I belonged. And here's the other thing: Australians are also some of the most chill, down to earth people you will ever meet. If you have traveled any bit of Europe or Bali extensively, you've definitely met Australians. You have definitely, they are avid travelers, especially to Bali, especially to Europe. Many of them between high school and uni, they will take like a gap year. So they will just save up a ton of money and travel Europe for 9 months to a year. So a lot of my European years, which I spent about 8 years traveling full time in Europe or living in Europe, I was mostly surrounded by Australians. So learning a little bit more of their culture, having Australian friends, it definitely helped. But going to Australia, being there and feeling this like this constant feeling of being othered. And I connected with other Australians that were either immigrants, like their parents immigrated to Australia, but they have Asian or African background. And I just spoke really candidly, like, sis, what's it really like? What I feel like, yeah, it's racist. Yeah, they're racist. And I think because the racism isn't as overt as it is in America, it's just more manageable. So this is not to say write off Australia altogether, but just know that you're stepping into a different kind of racism, which isn't as extreme, and you don't have the connected tissue of chattel slavery. I'll also say this: when it comes to classism, I also feel like in cities like Sydney, appearance is so heavily emphasized that if you are someone, like if you're a Black woman and you have been able to benefit from pretty privilege, you'll be okay. You might be okay. You might not have as negative experiences. And it wouldn't be shocking if an Australian man walks up to you and tells you something very fetishizing, very demeaning, very it's so reductive. You could tell it's like a fantasy. So you'll also have to deal with some of that. So overall, I just felt like my time in Australia, my multiple times in Australia, as much as I have incredible Australian friends and the Gold Coast is beautiful, and I have fond memories there. I saw a friend on tour there. I stayed with friends after they got married for a bit. Like I have pockets of beautiful memories in Australia, but I never saw it as a place where I could be fully liberated, both in my blackness and in my womanhood. It was always very reductive to being fetishized, being ostracized, being othered, or being stared at as like you don't quite belong. Um, but yeah, it's interesting. If you're someone that, you know, you want to leave the US, but you don't want to deal with a language barrier, you're not ready to just completely change the way you operate and live life, Australia can be a good starter country. It could be a good place for you to not have to adjust to too many differences. So Australia gets the number 5 spot. Number 4, uh, it sucks to name this country because it has both some of the most gorgeous views in the world, but also some of the most disgusting behavior. And we are talking about Italy. The experiences that I'm going to talk about aren't reduced to just me being a black woman. I think many women, if you travel solo, you will feel like you are constantly propositioned. And when I say proposition, this is not being hit on. This is being like accosted for sexual favors, being stopped on the street, being pulled over by a car, having euros waved at you, being bribed, walking alone and someone, you know, following. I've been followed so many times in Italy, and I've been there solo traveling, and gosh, I would say I was so naive in the beginning because I've been to Italy, is it 8 times, 8 or 9 times, a couple times for brand trips, a couple times, you know, as a part of my study abroad semester, a couple times to meet up with friends. But there was still so many times. One time was there to cover a festival. That was pretty cool. But there were so many times I was by myself where I felt like I had to constantly look over my shoulder to make sure I wasn't being followed by an older Italian man or just an Italian man in general. Like there, it's not limited to like we think of old creeps, but just I don't know what it is culturally, but here's what will happen. Men feel like it's either flattering or the only way for you to know that they're interested. So they have no shame in walking up to you and saying, let's have sex. Let's go in this hotel. Hey, I'll pay for a room here. Hey, come with me to my home. Hey, what are you doing in an hour? Hey, meet me under this bridge. It's like, nah, like who is this working on? Who is this working on? And some will say that Americans have this reputation of being like easy when they go abroad because they're so turned on by the accents. But I think there's also an element of the human and sex trafficking that also happens from Africa. And I'll talk about that in another country as well. But that's also a big part of it. I know that there are many African women that get trafficked, and it's so unfortunate and it's so sad. And so they see Black women, and it's kind of like they're like everyone is categorized as someone that can be bought. So it sucks because that kind of ruins your experience. And even though, you know, you have Cinque Terre and some of the most gorgeous, I mean, to this day, like some of my favorite views in the world are in Italy, which is it's such a eh, clearly struggling to find words because it's like you have such beautiful views with sometimes such ugly memories. And I think if there's one thing that I'm I try to keep in mind when it comes to Italy. And feel free as well. Many Black women, Black Americans who've moved to Italy in the last 10 years have documented their experience. So if you're someone that's still set on Italy, maybe because of, you know, fashion capital of Milan, but I encourage you to YouTube and Google some of these women's experiences because they'll speak in a lot more detail, even after they've learned the Italian language and, you know, they can obviously understand when people are talking about them and some of the really dirty and nasty things that are being said about them while they're right there, because it's assumed that they can't understand. So it's just really unfortunate. Italy, as beautiful as it is, I don't know that you as a Black woman will be able to fully feel liberated and at peace. Okay, number three, I'm going to say the city and the country. This city is not new on this channel, but Cape Town. Johannesburg is different. If you are going to South Africa to move to Johannesburg, go for it. If you are going to South Africa to move to Cape Town as a Black woman, expect to feel like you are living in America 40 years ago. You might think, oh, well, Glow, apartheid. Like, nah, like it should be good, right? It's still it's almost it's worse than apartheid. It's apartheid plus, apartheid extreme, apartheid bonus, apartheid premium. Nothing has changed. It's crazy how where do I start? Okay, I have already done a video and I'll link to it at the end where I talk about my 5 worst experiences as a Black woman traveling. And I talk in detail at length about what happened in South Africa, but I'll briefly mention a couple of those moments. You walk around, people view you automatically as a help. You will see in all the public service jobs, you will never see a white South African working. It is only Black people working. And any of the more elite looking jobs, it will be white South Africans. And if you go to a restaurant, whether it's a fancy one or an everyday one, it is rare to find a Cape Town restaurant that has both people, both white people, both Black people, and even, and I'm going to say this term, not to use the same context as America, but anyone who is mixed and South African, they call themselves colored. We know that is a very dated term in the US, but in South African history, colored just means mixed. So you have people that are Durban, a mix of Asian, a mix of Black, a mix of white, mix of, European, but they call themselves colored. And you won't even see coloreds and white people mixing and mingling in Cape Town. So this very intense feeling of segregation. And because you might be able to afford what the white South Africans can do or where they can eat, you will still feel so out of place and like you don't belong. And you'll almost feel like, yeah, it's unsettling to be in a place where everyone is there's also this air of pretentiousness that some white South Africans walk with, and you feel it immediately. And I talked about um, a very just strange and unfortunate encounter. I land in the airport in Cape Town and I'm in line waiting for immigration to stamp my passport. And this tall white South African man just walks past me and stands in front of me as if I'm not right there. And it's that feeling I felt so many times where it's all I could be in line, I could be doing something, and I'll be brushed past or walked in front of as if I'm not even there. I've never felt that invisible before. It's infuriating. And because of not having home court advantage, you got to constantly bite your tongue, constantly humble yourself. I'm not trying to be locked up abroad. So even as many people that said in the previous video, oh, I would say something. Oh, couldn't be me. I would pop off. I'm like, I like my life. I like my ability to travel. I like having this passport be unscathed. I can't. I can't risk it. Travel means too much to me. So I don't have home turf. People are going to do what they're going to do. But that happened often. And in this airport where I'm just like, you know what? I just landed. It's nothing. And when the immigration officer is calling the next person, there is a Black South African woman who steps in front of this tall white South African man who's about to walk past. She's like, wait, and points to me to go. Like she saw me. She saw me. And that feeling of, man, it's a powerful thing how much you feel almost protected and respected when you're in these spaces where it could be one white South African and 10 black South Africans, but the white South African will take up so much space because their arrogance, their pretentiousness, they walk around with their chest out like they own the place. And unfortunately, they do. You look at the wealth disparity and the wealth gap. White South Africans run Cape Town, and it's so unfortunate. And I'll transparently talk to my black South African friends and my colored South African friends like, what happened? When I was here in 2017, it wasn't this bad. When I was here in 2019, it wasn't that. Like, why is it getting worse every time I come? And they're just like, one of them said one day their white South African friends just stopped talking to them. No beef, no argument, no issue. They just cut them off. And so I think there's this, there's something happening. There's something in the air. So yeah, as an American, you might be able to fund a really cool lifestyle in Cape Town, some gorgeous neighborhoods and Camps Bay, and you might be able to stay at really nice Airbnbs. But ultimately, that daily feeling of a lack of belonging, a lack of respect, a lack of dignity, it's like you might as well be in America if you want that treatment. And last thing I'll say about Cape Town, when I was staying at an Airbnb, I was working on a writing project, and I got this Airbnb specifically for the view. When I'm going somewhere to isolate and work on something creative, I really like a view, but I'm also intentional with how much light I let into the space. So I was very excited about this place. And when I get there, it's almost as if, because Airbnb wasn't showing the race of the booker. There was a period where they didn't show the race because there were so many discrimination issues where bookings were being canceled once the host saw that the booker was black. And this is globally. So I get there and there's no eye contact. I can sense how uncomfortable this white woman, white South African is, and she's going on her ramble. She's still being polite, relatively polite, and showing me where things are. And then she gets to the end of the spiel and she's just like, and make sure you don't go outside after 5 p.m. because the blacks and the coloreds, it's very dangerous. And she says it in a way where it's like, again, she's not looking at me. So this is all a part of her spiel. She's not clocking or considering the fact that I am the target market she's warning me against. The blacks, oh, the blacks, so dangerous. Be careful, lock your doors. And I'm like, and while there might be crime, which crime exists everywhere, arguably crime exists more in America than anywhere else in the world. But while you're warning me about this, you're very intentionally signaling that the crime only comes from Black South Africans. They're so dangerous. Watch out. And I'm just like, ugh. It was so, ugh, it like ruined the stay. And after it was like a 20 something hour travel day, I had no capacity to find another place. I'm already checked in. It's almost sunset. And I'm like, listen, the review that this woman is going to get, I'm gonna just be honest. So yeah, I let Airbnb know, very racist remarks were made and it made me uncomfortable. And, Airbnb solved it in their own way. I don't know that the listing was taken down, but they did compensate me. So I'm grateful for Airbnb's support. But yeah, anytime I go to Cape Town, I'm mindful when I hang out with my Black South African friends, my colored South African friends, and then I have my white South African friends. And sometimes I let them know, I'm like, things are getting different. Things are getting weird around here. What do you mean? That's another video. All right, next country is similar to why I listed Italy, but Spain. Spain, I lived in for 2 years, specifically Barcelona. And Barcelona, I still consider probably one of the most beautiful European cities in the world. Well, in Europe, obviously, but Barcelona is a vibe. If you are a creative, if you are artsy, if you are, I don't know, entrepreneurial, Barcelona is a city that will ignite all of your creative juices. So absolutely recommend it for a visit, but to live similar to Italy, you'll have a lot of daily microaggressive behaviors where you will feel othered or like someone is making you feel like you're ruining their experience by existing. Like they will show you their discomfort that you are in the same space as them. And regarding Italy, it's actually more specific in Spain regarding the propositioning of sex workers. But there's a street called La Rambla and you would think I don't speak Spanish. Barceloneta and Ramblas. Lord, I've been. Anyways, that street, you will find it's not good to go there after 7 p.m. as a Black woman, because what's going to happen is there will be a lot of Black sex workers, specifically African sex workers, that again were probably trafficked, that probably don't have access to their passports, and their pimps or whoever is running their lives, is forcing them to have daily quotas. So if you are walking or anywhere on that street, customers who expect there to be Black sex workers might proposition you and might, talk to you, might come up to you. And there was one time I was in jeans, a sweater, a scarf. I didn't think, definitely wasn't looking to be hit on, but didn't think I was even looking like anything. And, just the way that they approach you is it's so transactional. And I'm like, what? Money for what? No. So confused because I didn't even register what was happening. And then I walk a little bit further on that street and I'm like, well, at first, because I saw a Black woman, I was like, hey, sis, hey, sis. And again, I'm so green. I'm in my mid 20s the first time this happened. I'm like, hey, sis, what's up, sis? And I noticed they're not smiling back. And so I'm like, okay, it's kind of strange. Normally, when you see Black women or Black people, when you travel, you acknowledge each other. You do the nod, you do it's just I see you. Well, you have a moment. And these women were just, yeah, even some like rolled their eyes or like kind of scrunched their nose at me. And I was like, what's happening? And once I realized, I'm like, oh, every block there's a different Black woman. I'm like, oh, wait, is that again so green? And I'm like, oh, this is their territory and I'm technically trespassing, and so they're looking at me as competition. Again, I'm in jeans and a scarf, so it goes to show that you don't even have to be dressed as anything when they are propositioning you, because the Black women that are working on La Rambla, they're also dressed in everyday clothing. So they're looking at me as competition, thinking that I'm trespassing on their corner or their territory when I'm just walking to an ice cream shop. Like, yeah, that was a lot. So I just didn't appreciate that. And I think many people will tell you overall the sentiment with in many Spanish cities is that tourists, they're sick of us. Tourists, expats, whatever, like there has always been, when I was living there was always talk of economic issues, economic crisis, youth unemployment rates. So I think there is a little bit of scarcity that's like felt with, all these people that are coming in with their strong American currency, raising the prices, pricing us out. So I think there's already a disdain for expats overall, whether you're Black or just an expat in general. So you might have better luck in Sevilla, Granada, even Madrid was dope. I've been to Pamplona, but I've visited a few Spanish cities, and I would say they're great for vacation, not so much for living. Okay. And the last place that I do not recommend that you move to as a Black woman is the Czech Republic. It is not a secret that I had probably the most traumatic travel experience when I went to Prague, but I was spit at. I was spit at, and when I was walking down a street, a woman turned her husband's head around so that he wouldn't even lay eyes on me. And just this feeling, again, this assumption that if you're a Black woman, the only way that you can afford to be or live in Europe is that, you're sleeping with our men, that you're being trafficked, or that you're a sex worker. So I always felt this constant, like, this people would look down on me as if we know why you're really here. We know how you're able to afford to be here. Like show your sponsor, show the man that's paying your way through because there's no way you as a black woman can afford this life. And a very outdated perception of black people. And in one of my videos where I talked about this experience, I'll link to it, but a Czech woman, she was very kind to respond and she was like, "You're so right. Us Czech people are, we can be very racist and we have very outdated, limited beliefs of who we think Black people are." And I appreciated how direct and transparent she was. She was like, "This is the general perception of what we think about Black people." And she just listed it. I believe I pinned it on the video that I'm going to link to at the end. And if I didn't, I'll make sure I repin it. But you can see just all of the people that commented under that were just like, "Thank you for your honesty. It's better to know, like, I rather you snarl in my face than pretend to, like me. And like talk about me behind my back." So Czech people, I think there's just a lot of work that they have to do in terms of being accepting and understanding and open-minded. So yeah, as much as like there's a city, a little village called Český Krumlov. I'm going to throw it up on the screen so you could see how stunning it is. One of the most stunning views that I've ever seen in Europe. And I can't even go back and visit. Like I wouldn't go back if I wanted to because it's just my time in that country was so traumatic. It was almost like it tainted the whole experience. And one day I do hope that I can return with a fresh and renewed perspective for, it's not personal. It's not personal how I'm being treated and to take things at face value. But for now, they won't see me for a few years. And I hope this video is, if anything, enlightening to the very real experiences that you can have when you move abroad. Listen, I'm all for team get the heck out of the US and find your liberation and freedom somewhere else. But in these 5 countries that I've mentioned, it comes with its own issues. No country is, of course, perfect, but there are many other places that are 10 times better. And I talk about them in other videos. I will link to it at the end. So, hope this is helpful. If you don't know, my name is Glow, and I make videos every single day for one simple truth to remind you that you deserve what you desire. So, whatever it is, go get it. Go get it. And I'll see y'all tomorrow.